The great thing about the 60s is that they meant so much to so many different people. Forget the old adage of not really being there if you can remember them. The fact is that perhaps more than any other decade, it was the decade of change, conjuring up different memories for everyone, depending on what you were into and where you were at the time. For some, the 60s will be all about swinging London. For others, the happy-go-lucky early days of the Beatles, or perhaps the summer of love and the hippie dream.
Don't even be afraid to die.
It was certainly the decade of liberation, protest and demonstration. There was women's lib, student protests, anti-war demos and the peace movement. And let's not forget the wonder of space travel, with man finally landing on the moon.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
There was an air of excitement, hope and freedom, and life was there to be lived.
It was an incredibly exciting, invigorating sort of a period. It was a great time to grow up in.
We'd got money, you could always get a job, there was plenty of work about, things weren't ridiculously expensive, and you just enjoyed yourself.
We did everything we wasn't supposed to do, which is what it was all about. And enjoyed every minute.
We were just young men and, so in our youth, as it were,
It was so new, everything was so new and fresh, and the 60s was just a fantastic decade, really.
To some, the 60s will always mean being a mod or a rocker. To use the posh term, these were British subcultures, tribes if you like, and they were just about as far apart as you could get. The mods, clean cut with sharp-looking threads, listening to soul, ska and some of the greatest British pop music ever made, riding about on their Lambrettas and Vespers. The rockers, with their leather jackets, jeans, greased back hair, tearing around on their powerful motorbikes to the soundtrack of American rock and roll. Needless to say, there wasn't much love lost between them.
My name is Steve Howard, I'm 63 years of age and I've been a mod since 1963 and I lived in North Kent. The word mod didn't come into being until 1963-64. We was individualists with modernists. The press cut the wording down to mod, and that is what we was left with.
My name is Roger Glover. I grew up in Southend-on-Sea. The first time I knew I was a rocker, I read it in the News of the World. I think, well, no, I'm not one of them. I'm a coffee bar cowboy. But we then adopted the name and used it. And I think the derogatory term turned into a badge of pride.
I wanted to be different. I wanted to be clean and tidy. I didn't want to wear what my predecessors wore, i.e. the rockers, because I thought they was dirty and scruffy and living in the past. And I was looking forward in life, not backwards.
It was almost Masonic, the ritual of going with it, of the helmet on, of the gloves, and then the ritual of the starting the bike. No magic little press button. The procedure you went through with the kickstart and everything else. It was just wow, and that's what I wanted to be.
For me, mod was all about being clean, and to be a rocker was to be, well, not really clean. I didn't like the bikes, I didn't want to get my suits messed up, the scooters were clean to ride, they had leg shields on, etc. I didn't want my hair plastered down with grease or oil all over my clothes, really, you know.
Oh, they were swarming, there were show-offs, there were too clean cut, they got me Mr. Perfect and everything, you know, all prim and proper. And we got leather jackets on, the jeans, the baseball boots, the white T-shirts, and that was it.
We used to get all sorts of insults, you know, you mod ponces, etc. But I got a buzz out of that, really, being different. You strutted about like peacocks with the clothes on your back, and the scooters you rode, the way you wore the clothes, the way you rode the scooters, the type of music you listened to, and it gave you that sort of incredible sense of belonging.
Unfortunately, a lot of people remember the Mods and Rockers solely for the bank holiday scuffles at the seaside. But Mods and Rockers weren't all about fights. In fact, that had very little to do with what attracted youngsters to each scene. There was a lot more to it than that. Being a mod meant dressing well in fancy clobber, and for one thing they could afford it. After the austerity of the 50s, teenagers had their choice of jobs and money to spend.
There's a lot of Italian influence. I mean, the scooters are obviously Italian. Some of the suits had throwbacks to Italian styling. But basically, mod reinvented itself, you know, daily, monthly, whatever. And there wasn't really any wrong way of doing mod. The criteria was, if it looked good, you wore it.
The look was natural. The inspiration really come from Steve McQueen, American college boy era. The short hair, the neat dress, smart clothing.
It was this neat, minimal, straight, stripped down, bare style, really. I loved it.
The girls had the Mary Quant type hairstyle, which was all geometric type, all different styles and bobs. But I preferred the short crop, longer hair at the side and all sort of standing up like a hedgehog on the top. It was awful trying to keep it tamed because it was curly hair, and you stick it down with sellotape to keep it flat.
We had the monkey jacket. It's a small bomber jacket, knitted collar and knitted cuffs of stripes. And you had what you called a deck chair belt, which was like a deck chair patterned striped belt. Little tiny things you changed. You know, you might not have the same belt on 2 days running because someone else had cottoned onto it.
You used to watch Ready Steady Go on the Friday night, not necessarily for the acts, but to see what the London kids were wearing, and you wouldn't necessarily copy them, but you'd take an idea, oh yeah, a little shimmer here, and oh, that looks rather good, I'll do that, you know. But you made it your own, you personalised it really.
I used to think, oh gosh, what am I going to wear tonight? So I sometimes used to get the sewing machine up, see if I got any fabric, and whip a dress up. I got various patterns, and I'd put various pieces together, and just make a new dress for the evening.
People just knew what to wear, and you know, the clothes were just a statement of you, really.
And here it is, the very street where the swinging London phrase was born. A place that goes hand in hand with hedonism, way-out clothes and freedom. Carnaby Street. It was right here, in the heart of London, that so many came to buy the latest mod gear.
I was working for Paul's at 39 Carnaby Street and 47 Carnaby Street. And Carnaby Street in the day was a flamboyant area. It was very similar to early days of Berwick Street and around that area. It was flamboyant clothing. It was way out clothing what no one else would dream wearing. I mean, pink trousers, lime green trousers, frilly shirts, i.e. what Tom Jones used to wear. It used to be all that stuff, you know. It was just fantastic. Everything was different.
It was all very well wearing the right clobber and being at the cutting edge of fashion, but there was quite a lot of resistance to this new effeminate style, especially from your mum.
She thought we was homosexuals. And she put padlocks on my scooter because I was wearing a pink polka dot shirt. And she said, you're not going out in that, you're going out in blue or white. I said, I'll go out in what I want to go out in. And ended up with a polka dot shirt, and I had to get a bus because my scooter was padlocked up.
Mod really was the mind's eye opening, that in the 60s. I mean, I know friends have been beaten up for wearing pink shirts, you know. But mod in the 60s changed all that really. You know, you could sort of think outside the box a little bit.
Even if some in 1960s Britain weren't ready for the new mod look, it certainly went down well with the fairer sex.
I had a double-doored wardrobe in my bedroom, and I had 14 different coloured tonic mohair suits, all different shades. Very impressive for the young ladies, and therefore we could pull any type of girl on the way we was dressed. And we could even pull a rocker girl because they wanted to be different again.
Amongst all the peacock strutting showmanship and clean lines of mod fashion was the loose-fitting hooded parka. How did that factor into the neat, sharp look of the mod?
The parka basically was to keep your clothes dry in the rain really. We used to ride to Skegness with parkas on. Then we'd roll up the parkas and stash them underneath the scooter. You wouldn't walk around the streets in a parka. They're not the fashion icon that they've evolved into now. We just used to buy them from army surplus stores, sew a couple of badges on them, and it was purely protective clothing. But you know, they've evolved into this iconic thing, this iconic piece of clothing, really. You know,
it was just a utility, and if your scooter broke down, you could put the parka on the floor and use it to get under your scooter and repair a spare wheel, whatever the case may be, change wheels in general. Or, if you was lucky, have a young lady inside with you, and they used to keep both of you warm.
As for the rockers, their DNA was much clearer. They were direct cousins of the teddy boys of the 50s, but the rockers weren't into fancy clothes. Sure, they wanted their own look, but theirs was a world of leather jackets, jeans and transport caffs. But most important of all were the motorbikes. Triumphs, Nortons and BSA Gold Stars were kings in the rocker world, and the bikes were a noisy, powerful symbol for all that the rockers stood for. They weren't called the Ton-Up Boys for nothing. Doing the magic ton was almost a rite of passage.
The magic ton, that's what you had to do, and it was an achievement. It was like going to the moon. That was our thing. You know, you got to find yourself, and that was part of it.
The Ton-Up Boys came from the magic number 100, because a lot of bikes wouldn't do 100, so it was quite a feat sometimes, and shake these to pieces. But if you managed it, you know, a lot of them you'd tune and tweak, and it was just a status symbol, if you like. I've done the ton.
Down the boulevard, we used to say was a mile, and we used to get the 100 up down there.
Yeah. That was the thing, to do the 100, do the ton.
We were ton-up boys, proper ton-up boys. Yeah.
That's how we lived. You know, when you went on your bike, you didn't go slow, you just went as fast as you could, wherever you could, and did what you wanted to do on a bike, you know. And the camaraderie between the people, and that's what brought everybody together.
I mean, you could go down Castle Boulevard into the city, and you could go mental down there, and at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night, and there was no cars. There wasn't anybody.
There used to be most of our people all lined up down the boulevard. You know, it was like a big racetrack, and we all used to go out there to test the bikes out and see who was in top spot. And we used to do that regular, you know, and somehow the police used to get to know about it.
You could be there for 2 hours before they'd bothered to come.
Yeah. I can remember PC Shirley saying to me, let's have a race, when he was on his police bike. He says, but if you beat me, I'm going to nick you.
It was a milestone, a benchmark for bikers to have a bike. If you've got a bike that
was known to do the ton, then you were definitely one of the rockers in that elite clique. And that's why I always rode a BSA Gold Star, because although they weren't fast on acceleration to beat the Triumphs, they were faster on top speed, and the top speed of the Gold Star, when it was properly tuned and running, was probably in the region of 120 miles an hour.
My Gold Star, I think it was possibly my favourite bike. I think somebody once referred to it as an antisocial pig. It was actually a racing bike with lights on. Oh, orgasm on wheels.
The rocker scene wasn't just for the boys. Rocker girls were just as comfortable hanging onto the back of a Gold Star, or even beating the ton-up boys at their own game.
There were a few that rode motorbikes, and there was quite a few girl rockers. Really looked nice in their tight jeans and their leather jackets. Apparently one girl used to come down the Ace, and she had a really tasty Vincent Flowers, and she used to say, if you can catch me, you can have me, but I didn't have a bike fast enough.
For the rockers, it was also about image, and the leather jackets and roaring motorbikes gave them a menacing quality, personified by Marlon Brando in The Wild One. But for the wider public, these coffee bar cowboys were an intimidating threat to society, which wasn't always the case.
You used to look mean and moody, because that's how you was portrayed. But if you tried it on with your mates, oh, shut up, you know. So, it's what came over.
You'd still be a little bit noisy and rowdy when you was on the street corner in Slab Square talking and with your mates. But if an adult came along, you stopped, there was no swearing, you stepped to one side. So there was still the respect for the other generation and the older generation, except John, because he was always antisocial. But you know what I mean? You know, nowadays there's not that respect, but there was the one side of us that wanted to rebel and wanted to be different, but there was only so far you'd go.
We was all at the calf. And this little old lady come along, she said, my husband in a mini, he's just come out of hospital, he's got a puncture. So 8 burly rockers went wandering down the road. And the look on his face was really scared. Said, don't worry, we'll come to mend your puncture. So he said, I'll get the jack out. No, he said, that's all right. And we lifted the mini up and took the wheel off and put another wheel back on. And he said, oh, thank you ever so much. I think once people got to know us, then they perhaps changed their mind about us.
One of the best-known rocker venues is this one, the Ace Cafe on the North Circular Road in London. Since it opened in 1938 as a transport cafe, it's become a mecca for the rockers.
If you have an interest in motor vehicles, 2-wheel, 4-wheel or more, this is something akin to perhaps what Wembley is to football, this is to motoring. The place was destroyed in an air raid, November 1940, rebuilt after the war. That post-war period saw a baby boom generation come of age with a booming economy and work, and they went out basically and bought the fastest vehicles they could afford.
Some of the guys used to come past the Ace Cafe almost flat out on their Triumphs and BSAs. It was the mecca of biking and modern biking in the 60s. It was the place to show off your motorbike and to show off the tuning and to speed against fellow motorcyclists up and down the North Circular.
The Ace Cafe was like, I suppose it was like the Buckingham Palace for rockers, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Whenever you see any old photos in the 60s, they're always sort of the Ace Cafe mainly. And that was a really big meeting place for rockers back then. And they used to have things like they'd put a coin in the jukebox and they had to race round and get back in time before the record finished.
Ace Cafe experiences, that was something quite unique and makes you very proud to be part of that era, to be perfectly honest, and read about it. And at times you read about a chapter in a book about the Ace Cafe and the cafes and the ton-ups and the bikes, and you think, goodness me, I was a part of that. I was actually there.
The rockers had their snarling motorbikes, but the mods also needed to find a mode of transport they could call their own. Something classy looking and neat, and that would also be something of a fashion item.
They were sleek. You could embellish them, you could put loads of mirrors on them. I like the really sort of pared down model with perhaps just a fly screen and a couple of mirrors. They were clean to ride. The engines were cased with the side panels, so you didn't get grease all over your nice new suit or whatever. Because, you know, perish the thought of getting grease on a tonic mohair suit.
First guy I went out with down, his scooter was covered in fur seating, fur up the back, and fur hanging off the back, and then just mirrors at the front. He'd run me home at the end of the night, you know, and we'd be waving to people who were standing at the bus stops and stuff. No crash helmet, of course. Used to wear a parka coat.
We like plain scooters. Sometimes we took the side panels off. Sometimes we went to a scooter dealer and had them chromed. As for lights and mirrors, they weighed you down. And if you had a smart scooter and you was down the coast and you parked it up, it was either going to get stolen or a rocker was going to kick it over.
There's another iconic symbol that's come to epitomise mod culture, and that's the Mini. Not the skirt, the car.
Most of the mods, when they moved on from scooters, because they didn't want to get wet at Easter, they used to use Minis. And many a time I've been down the coast on the Mini, and I've been frightened out of my life with big lorries coming by. And I mean, them days, they weren't going that fast.
Minis just looked so cool anyway, really, you know, and they were a very 60s phenomenon.
It was a cheap car. It was made for the working class person. A lot of women used to drive them because they were so small. And then Steve McQueen used one as well, I believe, and a couple of the other sort of stars of the day.
It wasn't just that it was a cheaper vehicle, but I'm told that when you're 17 and 18, the most important thing in your life is a girl. And a girl will get in the car far easier to persuade to get in the car than she'll get on a bike.
It wasn't only the way the mods and rockers got around that was so different, the soundtrack to their lives were also poles apart. For the early mods, it was soul, ska and blue beat, and it wasn't long before British groups began to spring from the mod movement itself.
They used to listen to like black American music. We now know it as like Northern Soul, but before Northern Soul came onto the scene, it was just like classed as black soul music, American soul music.
Some of the floor fillers is like Green Onions, which is, you know, everybody knows it, and it is just like one of those tracks that's very associated with the mod thing. Booker T, like the actual band, did have like their own influence on people like the Small Faces.
The British bands that we saw were Small Faces, obviously. They were brilliant. Steve Marriott's voice was out of this world. And the Kinks, of course, they were a big influence.
There was no same dance in the same week. Because you had Ready, Steady, Go, the dances were coming off the TV screens, and that was what we was learning to do.
It was more like a sweeping thing, you know, across the floor with your feet. You'd be you'd be going down and up, and stuff like that, sweeping along, but not a lot of hand movement and not around the floor in one spot practically. So, because there's no space anywhere.
It just changed. If you was like a peacock in front of a young lady in your sharp mohair suit, if you could dance good, you pulled that girl. And there was a saying I used to say, if I asked you to dance, what would you say? And if they turned around and said no, I say, well, I was only asking to be polite and walk away, and you was guaranteed with a dance that night or even more, because they didn't like to be rejected.
Rockers didn't have much interest in that and thought a lot of it was namby-pamby and poncy. What really revved them up was some good old-fashioned rock and roll.
My hero was Vince Taylor, and this guy in a black leather jacket, black shirt, white tie, black leather trousers and white boots. I bought myself a pair of white boots. It was quite bizarre because I was classed as outrageous in the early 60s for wearing white boots. And to me, that was my hero.
I got a jetpack machine, see me on the Sunday when I'm shaking with that queen. Always waiting, accelerating that jetpack machine.
And people like Billy Fury, who again rode motorbikes, Eddie Cochran, and probably the craziest man of all was Jerry Lee Lewis.
People say we was governed by American music. No, we weren't at all. We listened to the music was there on the jukebox, but it was still the three big B's, bikes, birds and booze.
History has written up the differences between mods and rockers and made them conveniently black and white. Rockers thought the mods were dandy peacocks and the mods thought the rockers were greasy throwbacks, and that was that. Whichever way you look at it, there were big contrasts between the mods and the rockers, and it probably would have been for the best if they just ignored each other and got on with doing their own thing. But these were headstrong young people with points to prove, so of course there was some boasting and brawls. Nothing earth-shattering, but enough to make sure there was an us and them mentality. Courtesy of the British press, it soon became mods versus rockers.
If we see the scooter like coming towards us anywhere, you know, whatever, and there was a gang of the motorbike lads, they used to just ride up the side of them, and we like the ones with all the glass, you know, the glass mirrors and everything else like, and we sort of just get up the side of them and say, all right, bang, and kick the scooter, and the whole thing won't tell. All the glass was shattered everywhere, like, you know, and then we'd just mark the tank off for one, you know, another one with dead.
One Easter, John and myself was taking a back road to Skegger. It was a nice steady ride down, and we came up behind the back of a minivan. And the minivan doors opened, and it was full of mods with steel catapults and ball bearings, firing at us as we were riding the bikes behind us. So they got everything they deserved. They antagonised us.
Yeah, they were sworn enemies, really. I mean, I saw the odd skirmish down on the coast, but it was just the guys, you know, you know what young guys are like, they always like to fight.
Before the rockers would have a fight with the mods, as was in them days, they'd have a fight in between themselves just to get themselves warmed up. And that did happen on a few occasions. There was a lot of rivalry, especially on the bikes.
It tended to boil over at seaside resorts on the bank holiday. The first unlikely battleground being Clacton-on-Sea, Easter 1964. And on that unusually cold day, it was still ice creams, deck chairs and candy floss as the mods and rockers knocked lumps out of one another. When Winston Churchill mentioned fighting on the beaches some years earlier, this was definitely not what he had in mind.
The trouble actually started with some mods bunking in the pier, jumped over them, and they was going the wrong way up the Helter Skelter.
And I've done that.
And actually, apparently, they started and fought a couple of coppers. And there was then a ruckus, I think, the next night outside a chip shop. No news whatsoever in the papers, nothing exciting happened. So the press got hold of it and then blew it up.
You can't beat the British press when they're on a mission to whip up the public into a frenzy, churning out headlines such as "Wild Ones beat up Margate," 90 arrests in Terrortown, and menaces to society. More than 40 years on, what do some of those so-called menaces recall?
You saved up your pennies and what money you could scrounge and whatever you could sell to get some money together for a Friday to Monday bank holiday. And it was Clacton 64, 63, the Easter, the cold Easter, what Roger was talking about. That was the first hit. So we thought, well, we'll go to Brighton. But unknown to the constabulary in Brighton, we decided to go to Margate. So in 64, the Margate police weren't ready for us, the Kent Constabulary. 5 police officers.
5 coppers.
5 coppers. 1 police van, that's all they had, because I remember knocking the blue light off the top of it with a beer bottle. All they kept doing, they kept taking us up, picking us up, taking us up police station, just to try and keep the numbers of teenage youth away from the seafront. And if you was unlucky and you got pulled in front of the magistrate would sit there, was Dr. Simpson. Now, in Quadrophenia, the words he used was not in Brighton, it was in Margate, because I was actually there. And he turned around and said, you sawdust Caesars come to the coast, invade the coast, upset all the residents in Margate. Why? Don't know. No one knew what you went down for. Well, you didn't let on. You just said, don't know. What do you mean you don't know? You must know. Well, I don't know. The press come up to us. Both sides, mods and rockers, offered us a £5. Maybe the rockers, they offered them a £10. Asking us to cause a bit of confrontation between us.
Because they got more money.
Yeah, they got more money. They was waving £10 notes in front of us. But unknown to them, at the end of the session, or the little confrontation, the press used to ask for a £5 back off of the rockers, and that caused even more trouble.
There were some problems with a bit of chasing, but there's a lot of shouting, a lot of pushing, shoving, a lot of chasing up the beach. And when that wasn't taking place, we found the press were down there looking for sensational stories, and they would offer us some coffee money or some beer money to chase a few mods up the road and push them over. Did we do it? Yes.
There was no weapons attack, I remember. There might have been an odd glass, but nothing. There was no knives or guns or whatever. It was basically fist fights.
I stayed out of the way. There's far too many mods. I'm not that silly to sort of pick on 5 times as many mods as myself.
If you get the media look on it, every time a mod and a rocker came together, there was fighting.
Which I often did.
Well, yeah, but not all the time. So there was groups, like we went to Skegness at bank holidays, it was confrontational then, as it was down Brighton and all these other places. But normally when you was down Nottingham, you'd possibly go to a mod pub just for a laugh, to intimidate them and park in the car park, just to say, there's more of us than there is of you, what are you going to do about it? And it was that type of thing.
Now, I personally couldn't see the point in spending 3 months' wages on a decent suit to get it ripped to shreds by some chain-toting, leather-studded greaser on the beach at Skeggy, you know. I mean, and I think in some respects it was a media fuel thing anyway. I reckon 99% of the kids who were in my generation, that mods versus rockers fighting on the beach was as far from reality as it could be, really, you know.
There's a little bit of truth on everything, but the newspapers did exaggerate, and then they attracted other people who went down to investigate. The police, I think, sometimes at a hint of trouble would perhaps, I won't say overreact, because they stopped the trouble. So if it stopped the trouble, whatever actions they took, whether they be legal or not, worked. But there's a certain amount of truth in it. I think a lot of it was running about and shouting and yelling.
Mass battles, not like it was shown on the television. But there was a lot of media hype and some of the worst riots in Skegness. Those were the headlines in the papers, which sold papers. But what the riots were, we don't know.
Guess what? The mods and the rockers didn't destroy British society. In fact, they didn't really do it much harm at all. And despite what the newspapers portrayed, there was a lot more to being a mod or a rocker than just fighting on bank holiday weekends. But the times were changing, and by 1966, a new culture had forced its way onto the British scene, albeit gently, one that caught the mood from across the Atlantic, carrying a message of peace, love and brotherhood. Wearing paisley shirts, flares and long hair, flower power was a long way from the mods and rockers, and the young people fell in love with it. The mods and rockers may have disappeared from the front pages, but that's not to say they went away. The diehards never left their passion behind. And more than that, a new generation of mods and rockers have managed to keep the faith. The older generations, along with their younger counterparts, still manage to live the life all these years later, helped by huge reunions at the ever-popular Ace Cafe, the Moddingham Weekenders and Jack's Hill Caf.
I first got into being mod in 1979 when I was still at school. Why? Because of the film Quadrophenia. You know, it was a great influence on me throughout my life. You know, it was the music, culture, the whole, you know, the clothes, everything. You know.
It got a lot of kids back into the mods, really. You know, so you can't really knock it for that. I mean, I know people who are now sort of 40-something, and they say, oh, you know, okay, Quadrophenia wasn't quite right, you know, it missed the point in certain parts, but that got me into the movement, so, you know.
At school, you know, you was either a mod or a rocker at the time, you know, when the film came out, and, you know, I was a mod, and I've been ever since.
I got a job to write a script, and at the end of the day I got a credit as a story consultant on the film, and wrote the novel which tied in with it. Well, the rest's history, really. You know, it hasn't done my street cred any harm, though. You know, so yeah, it's good.
I would say I got into mod about 1980. I used to go to a youth club as part of junior school, and I was always dancing to the Specials and Bad Manners and Madness at the time. You know, they were all very closely associated with mod. And the mods enjoying, you know, a lot of ska and early blue beat in the, you know, in the 60s. You know, so they were heavily influenced by that sort of music.
So you could say that Madness played their part in keeping the mod flame alive. And yes, Trish was right. Our early influences were from some of those original mod ska tunes. So well done. But enough of me and Madness, and back to our second generation of mods.
It was the music and the image as well, because the three-button suit, the shades, I'm wearing them now, but that was my way into the mod scene. After that I backtracked and got into other things. It's not about being a cardboard cutout from the past. It's about, well, we have one foot in the past and an eye on the future, so we're looking out for new bands, the latest clothes. That's what a mod is, really.
We met at a place called the Ace Cafe in London.
Yeah.
They had Ace Cafe reunion. I went down on my own, met some friends down there, and I saw Max. He was with the Italian rockers and some German rockers, and thought, they look pretty cool. So I went over to talk to them, and we've been together ever since.
Oh yeah.
I suppose the bikes to me and the guys are a bit like, I suppose, stockings and stilettos for men.
Yeah, you know, it's like that 60s looking, you know, like,
Yeah.
you know, the music, and not just the music, the atmosphere, like, we like 60s stuff, like, generally, even in our house. We got a 60s car as well, you know, we got a little Triumph Herald.
Yeah. And so it's the kind of whole thing, the whole lifestyle, just everything, you know, and the look for women. Okay, I don't know if it's glamorous now, but... you know, it is a glamorous look, and it's when, you know, you could tell women were women and men were men.
I think it's fantastic. If they can have as much fun as we had, you know, you can't knock it. it enables me to carry on as I am. I mean, how many other people can wander around dressed as they were when they were 19? Wow, you know, it's great.
The era of the mods and rockers really seems to be about a few simple truths. Give young people some freedom, the opportunity to earn some money, and ways to do both. And likely as not, they'll find new ways of expressing themselves, and probably annoy society for a while. But when all the fuss has died down, people tend to look back and realise it wasn't that bad after all, and that actually a lot of good memories and lasting influences came out of it. Before you know it, even those who were never mods or rockers are looking back with starry eyes. It's called nostalgia. But to the people we met today, it's much more than nostalgia. To so many of them, that era has shaped the rest of their lives, and it means as much to them today as it did back then.
It was a way of life. They were the good days to us. We're not trying to relive it. We're trying to get back with the people that we had friendship with. We've still got the bikes. We still enjoy the bikes. We still enjoy going fast. And that's what it's all about.
Being a mod is everything to me. The clothes, you know, the styling, the clothes, the music. You know, it's what I love. It's what I live for.
After 40 years, we are still, you know,
it's nearly 50 years actually.
Nearly 50 years.
And some
we're still together, we're still big
and this is just a small
pals, you know.
section.
Mods define me by, I suppose, giving me an incredible sense of detail, because mod was all in the detail. And it's just a matter, really, I suppose, of just taking a pride in yourself.
I won't call it a club, but in the relationship that we all are with each other, that's there forever. And once you are a rocker, yes, you are a rocker forever. Even if you don't have motorcycles now, you are still
It's
a
the things
rocker.
we went through.
It's still your life.
It's the things we went through in the 60s and 70s. It could never happen again. It never will happen again.
No.
And we've all got the same memories, good memories, and that's why we've all stayed good mates.
And it's formed who you are today. You are the person today
Yeah.
because of that.
Yeah.
I have very, very fond memories. I remember feeling very happy and excited every day, so looking forward to going out every single night.
It's smartness. It's the way, it's your inner self. It's the way you portray yourself. That's what makes you a mod, what makes you a rocker.
By definition, I'm still a mod, you know. Yeah, once a mod, always a mod, I think, really, yeah.
The whole thing really, the giggling and the laughing, yeah, just happy times. The whole thing was wonderful.
People what say to me, was the 60s really as good? And I say, yeah. Probably didn't have so much as we had now, but we had, in a lot of ways, a lot more. Freedom, friends, fun.
Still to come tonight, the Antiques Roadshows in Buckinghamshire at 11. After an hour in the war zone, German bombs rain down on Bath next, as Nick Knoll sheds light on the forgotten Blitz, exclusive to yesterday.